The rise and fall of Detroit is one of the most compelling stories in American history. Once hailed as the industrial powerhouse of the world, it became a symbol of economic despair, urban decay, and resilience. How did a city that epitomized the American dream crumble so dramatically? The truth may surprise you. Detroit wasn't always a city of hardship. In the early 20th century, it was booming, fueled by the automotive revolution. Innovators like Henry Ford transformed the city into the beating heart of American industry. The Motor City became a hub for opportunity, attracting workers from across the nation and beyond. By the 1920s, Detroit was thriving. Ford's introduction of the $5 a day wage revolutionized the labor market, creating a middle-class utopia. People could buy homes, send their kids to good schools, and even purchase the cars they built. Detroit was the blueprint for the American dream. But beneath the glittering surface of prosperity, cracks were beginning to form. The city's dependence on the auto industry made its economy fragile. As Detroit's wealth grew, so did its population, swelling to over 1.8 million by the 1950s. But with this rapid growth came challenges. Racial tensions, housing shortages, and political strife simmered just below the surface. The 1967 Detroit riots were a breaking point. What began as a police raid spiraled into one of the deadliest and most destructive urban uprisings in American history. Entire neighborhoods were burned, businesses destroyed, and the city never truly recovered. It marked the beginning of an exodus that would devastate Detroit for decades to come. White flight became a major factor in Detroit's decline. Many middle-class families moved to the suburbs, leaving behind a city grappling with a shrinking tax base and growing poverty. The once thriving neighborhoods became ghost towns almost overnight. Adding to the pressure, the auto industry, the backbone of Detroit's economy, was struggling to keep up with international competition. Japanese automakers like Toyota and Honda introduced more fuel-efficient, reliable cars, which ate away at the market share of Detroit's Big Three: Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler. As the 1970s and 1980s unfolded, Detroit became a city of contrasts. Shiny skyscrapers symbolized the remnants of past glory, while entire blocks were abandoned to urban decay. Crime rates soared, and unemployment skyrocketed. Detroit's golden age felt like a distant memory. One of the city's most glaring failures was its inability to diversify its economy. While cities like Chicago and New York embraced financial services and tech industries, Detroit clung desperately to its identity as the Motor City. It was a risky gamble that didn't pay off. By the early 2000s, Detroit's finances were in shambles. Corruption and mismanagement plagued the city's leadership. Scandals rocked the local government, eroding trust and worsening the city's problems. Detroit was spending more than it was earning, leading to a financial downward spiral. In 2013, Detroit made history for all the wrong reasons. It became the largest U.S. city to file for bankruptcy. The city was over $18 billion in debt, and essential services like police, fire, and education were in a state of crisis. For many, it felt like rock bottom. Detroit's infrastructure told the story of its collapse. Once majestic theaters, factories, and homes were left to rot. The Packard Automotive Plant, once a marvel of industrial engineering, became one of the largest abandoned buildings in the world. These haunting ruins became symbols of a city that had lost its way. Despite these struggles, Detroit never lost its fighting spirit. Grassroots movements began to emerge, determined to rebuild the city from the ground up. Artists, entrepreneurs, and activists flocked to Detroit, drawn by the promise of affordable living and the chance to create something new. Investment in downtown Detroit sparked cautious optimism. Companies like Quicken Loans relocated their headquarters, and new businesses began to emerge. It wasn't a full recovery, but it was a glimmer of hope. However, the recovery wasn't without controversy. Critics argued that the revitalization efforts focused too heavily on downtown, leaving neighborhoods to fend for themselves. The gap between the haves and have-nots only seemed to widen. Education remained one of Detroit's most significant challenges. The city's schools were underfunded, overcrowded, and often unsafe. For many families, the lack of quality education represented a vicious cycle of poverty that was nearly impossible to escape. The auto industry attempted to reinvent itself in the 21st century, embracing electric vehicles and automation. While this brought some jobs back to Detroit, the industry's reliance on technology meant fewer opportunities for workers compared to the past. Detroit's struggles also highlighted the broader issues facing America's urban centers. Rising inequality, economic shifts, and systemic racism played a significant role in the city's collapse. It wasn't just about cars, it was about people being left behind. The city's housing crisis told another painful story. Abandoned homes became breeding grounds for crime, and predatory lenders took advantage of vulnerable residents. Foreclosures were rampant, leaving families with nowhere to turn. Yet amidst the despair, there were stories of resilience. Community gardens sprang up in vacant lots, neighbors banded together to clean up abandoned buildings, and local artists turned graffiti into powerful messages of hope and resistance. Detroit's story is one of extremes: extreme wealth, extreme poverty, extreme loss, and extreme potential. For every setback, there's been a step forward, albeit a small one. The city's future remains uncertain, but its people refuse to give up. The shocking truth behind Detroit's economic collapse is that it wasn't inevitable. It was a result of decades of decisions, some driven by greed, others by neglect. But it's also a story of how hope can survive even in the darkest times. Detroit's history is a mirror reflecting America's own struggles and triumphs. It reminds us of the power of innovation, the dangers of dependency, and the resilience of communities determined to rise again. As you walk through Detroit today, you'll see a city that's both haunted by its past and hopeful for its future. It's a city of contradictions, a place where decay and rebirth exist side by side, telling a story that's far from over. Detroit is more than just a cautionary tale. It's a lesson in resilience, a testament to the human spirit, and a reminder that even in the face of collapse, there's always the possibility of rebuilding. The road ahead won't be easy, but Detroit has never taken the easy path. The city's story isn't just about what was lost, it's about what could be regained. Detroit may never be the industrial giant it once was, but it has the potential to become something new, something better, something that honors its legacy while embracing its future. The shocking truth behind Detroit's collapse isn't just about bad policy or economic shifts. It's about a city's heart and soul, its people, who despite everything are determined to keep fighting. Detroit's story is far from over,